Uh, Tina, uh, welcome to the show. Uh, we are gonna. I want to introduce you to the network we have in Indonesia. This will be recorded now and later on streamed on YouTube. And the goal for today is we want to know, or I want to know, uh, what motivated you to become the person that you are now, right? Not really on the personal uh, not really the personal aspect, but more the professional aspect. What created you to be here and to become who you are right now? Because we know each other from the World Economic Summit. We were in the same team, and that has everything to do with uh, connecting the small and medium enterprises globally, creating a better world by improving social economy, and also about um, everything except who you are. Because in the time that we talked here and there, I found out that you have actually a similar background as me, with a lot of trauma and a lot of lessons of life, and that made you to the strong person that you actually are today, right? And that's actually what I want to highlight today. Today I want to go there uh, where we don't see Tina very much. I know that you are someone who coaches executives. I know you do a lot of famous people like Emmy Awards winners and Silicon Valley people. But that I know how humble you are, because you will probably say, Damy, I did that, but I'm just a housewife and I love my family, because that's who you really are, right? That's how that's my opinion that I created from you when I talked to you the first time. And what is there, your family, that's the most important to you. And all the rest is just plain old say business, right? So,
Well, yes and no. Yes and no.
okay, we come
Because
to that later, because I want you to I will remember these words for later on.
okay.
So Tina, the first question that I actually have for you is the very simple one, the kickoff that everybody has. Who is Tina Greenbaum?
Well, I think you started out by saying I am a person who really deeply cares about other people. So I raised a family. I have 3 grown sons and 2 grandkids and 1 more on the way. And I'm that's really where my heart is very, very close. They're very close to me. And at the same time, I feel like I'm part of the human family. And so when you said something about my family is most important, it is. And professionally, it's not just a profession, it's really kind of a passion. Uh, from the time I was really young, when there was injustice, I would just get really outraged and I have a pretty big mouth and would get myself into all kinds of trouble and say things that to people that were in authority that I shouldn't have said. But it was always this righteousness of what's right. And so, my parents were great examples of that. And so that's really who I am. And what I do is all an outgrowth of who I am. It's not really the other way around. It's like I have this profession because of my beliefs and my interests and my gifts and talents and education. So that's why.
If you reflect that too, for example, because I know you were doing a lot of in psychology in the past in a different way. So if you compare it with the young Tina, right? Did you ever expect you come here where you are now?
Well, my mother's gone for quite a long time, but she would probably not be surprised.
She's been not. Are you surprised yourself?
No, actually.
No.
And I'm still not yet where I hope to be before I say goodbye to this world as we know it. So no, I've always been somebody that people would want to talk to. I did a training a long time ago, and it was on compassion fatigue, and the trainer said how to the whole room. I think we were all a bunch of psychotherapists, and he said, "How old were you when you started to help people?" And everybody went like, we were yay big. No matter who I was or where I was in my life, it was always, I found just that natural propensity to want to help, to want to take charge, to see what was going on, to make things better. And so when I was in college, my friends used to call me mother. And I said, no, I'm not your mother, I'm your friend. But that's who I am. My mother was really a natural born therapist, never trained. She was never wrong about people. If you could ever imagine having a mother who was really so sharp about human nature and people. And so I inherited a lot of her kind of natural wisdom. A lot of times people ask me things, I was like, where did that come from? I have no idea. I just like, I never knew that common sense was a gift. For me, it's just like common sense. It's like, what do you mean you don't know that? It's right in front of you. But it took me a long time to understand that not everybody sees the world that way.
Okay, and if this is a very personal question that I actually don't want to do, but you are telling, what would your husband say? If you ask your husband, who's Tina, what would he say? Because I know he loves you a lot, but what would he say?
Well, my first husband never really saw me. I was
Okay.
married for a really long time. I don't think he ever really knew who I was. He thought he did, but we were always, he used to say, you can't have two captains of one ship, and he always wanted to be the captain. And I don't always want to be the captain, but there's certain things that I certainly was better at than he was. So my first marriage was really me really growing and developing myself in spite of what he thought or didn't. And so I used to say to myself, when I said I would love to have, because I got married at 23, I was very young. I met him when I was 18. And I used to say to myself, I'd love to be able to find a partner and make a decision like a grown-up. Like really, who is the right person for me? And so my second husband is that person. He's not the person that I thought. He was not, I always tell him he's not that, he's not the Marlboro man that I, kind of always went after, but he's kind and he has a really big heart. And so we see the world very similar, in a similar way. He also is in his own way. He was a teacher for years. He teaches tennis, but he also is very passionate about racial issues, and in his retirement wants to start teaching about racial bias and being a white man and
Actually, what you're saying is the same as you. With the skills that he tries to help other people.
Exactly. And so in that way, he sees me. He's probably the first person that really, really sees me, really appreciates me, and gives me the really kind of the freedom to be able to pursue my crazy. Every time I say something like, I said, I have an idea, and he says, oh no, please, not another one. But he's very supportive, and it feels really nice.
Thank you for your openness. Thank you for your answer. And if you take that because it's very sensitive, right? And if you take that one, how do you use that in your work?
I think the process of personal growth, and you and I have talked about this in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
When you do and I go like this all the time, when I say personal growth, because it really is a whole body experience, the body and the mind and the pieces working together. And when we get to be able to be more of who we are, we're actually able to hold more of life's ambiguities and problems and issues. And so that's what the work has done for me, so that I can sit and listen with, I call it big ears. It's not just what you're saying, it's what I'm feeling that you're saying, and how my body interprets it, and how the relationship that I have with this body, that I understand how it speaks to me. And this is very powerful stuff. This
very
is
powerful.
really what I teach.
Why is it powerful? Can you explain that?
Well, because when we're in different parts of the world, but certainly in the Western culture, we grow up thinking that from here to here is the most important thing. Logic and and technology and arithmetic or math are very linear. this leads to that, leads to that. But we have two parts of us, two big parts of our brain, and that's really important. But the other part is also the creative side and the empathic side, and the one that kind of makes connections. Like, we don't have to think. It's like, oh my God, I could just do that, or oh, this shows up. So, and then we have this whole body that's connected to the brain, and they now, when I started, the neuroscience was just a baby of a topic. But now we can look at the brains and we can see all kinds of things that are happening. But this brain connection, this brain gut connection, is real. There's a nerve that goes that holds our emotion, and so our body speaks in the language of emotion, and our mind speaks in the language of logic. And if we're only working with half a deck, we're only working with half a deck. So
what you're saying is it will be very powerful. You can balance that and use it in your own benefit, right?
That's right.
In the
and then to others, and then to benefit others.
Yeah. So because I know a little bit about you and from my own perspective, right? When we're feeling something, then we always like how you would say it. It's a reflection from a reflex actually from the body and mind to see, okay, this happens, and then I'm depressed, and then automatically we feel depressed. But in between there's this in between space where we actually can decide to really feel depressed or not. And I know that I learned that in another way, exactly, in my way, and I admire the way you express yourself in that, because I cannot do that. I'm too hyper to bring it to people with that peace and actually an almost stoic way you make things clear, and it's actually pretty amazing. Yeah, I read your book, Mastery Under Pressure, of course, and that's of course very interesting for people who want to work on themselves, because that's your book is like a manual how to do that the right way, and I admire for you. Why did you decide to write that book, to publish that?
So what I did first, Damy, is I actually wrote the script for my online program.
Yes.
So I have, and then I took the script and I created the book from the script. But why did I decide to do it in the first place was I have all this training and all this knowledge and all this information that I have accumulated over the years, and I want to share it. I mean, this stuff works. I didn't make it up. I just put it together in a way that, from, again, my personality, the things that I discovered in working with hundreds and hundreds of people over the years. I've been doing it now for 40 years. And so I've sat in front of a lot of people and listened always with curiosity about how do I actually help this person go from where they are to where they want to be. Because what you and I know is the unconscious by its nature is unconscious. And so, and it drives everything. So what a disadvantage for us, honestly, as human beings, if we only have access to a part of us, and yet something else, it's like the rudder of a ship that's actually driving, steering the boat. And like, how do I do that? So what I teach is it's tools. I'm really a teacher at heart, and in the field of psychology, helping people to understand how this instrument actually works. That took me, a long time to figure that one out.
Who should read your book?
Everyone.
Why?
Everyone. Parents, teachers. I mean, it's not in a language for young children, so that could be. I actually have a son who is really, really creative, and at some point maybe we'll do that and put it to pictures and all that other thing. I just thought of that idea just as I'm sitting here, but it really probably from 14, 15 and up, the book is really is written in a way that is very understandable. I like to say that when you said something like it, I like to take the kind of the spiritual mumbo jumbo and all this kind of psychological stuff and then bring it down to just everyday language. What does this mean? How do we do this? I did a TEDx talk last June
Hmm.
called How to Befriend Your Inner Enemy, because so many of us grow up with trying to figure out how to make sense of a world that doesn't make sense to us. In other words, if our parents are fighting and arguing, or we're being critical, and we're being bullied, and all these different things that happen to us as we're growing, we make up stories to make sense out of it. And it's usually about there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And the truth is there's really nothing wrong with us.
Yeah,
It,
I know what you're talking about, because that's how we met and how where we talked about the first time, right? What I had a lot of happenings in my life, and somehow God gave me this blessing that I never forgot about. It was about me and not about them, and that they were wrong and not me. But that's maybe my remedy. But I also know that the things that happened to me were like, sometimes I feel like I already have a thousand lifetimes, right? And then when you, like what you say, you're already doing this 40 years now. I do it 20 years, 25. So I'm still a long way to go, but I can empower your words that then when you have spoken to thousands of people, because that's where you are on that amount, also me, then you start seeing that, and you have to be careful sometimes, because that you stop caring, right? Because sometimes people tell you things and you're like, is that all? You only been raped one time, right? Because you had so much worse, right? But you cannot do that. You have to give them that care and the attention that they need. So I get you where you go there. And but what I'm curious about, because these are the things that shape us, right? I also work as a psychometric analyzer, so I do a lot with DISC and that kind of stuff. And uh, I started to dislike categorizing people because it feels like judgment, right?
yeah.
And from the perspective that we have of other people, we know that we have different parents, we have different teachers, we have different friends, we have a different environment and different demands, and even when we look the same, we're never the same.
So
Everybody,
Damy, what I say about that is there's only so many themes in the human condition.
yeah,
So loss and grief and bereavement and betrayal and abandonment, and these are things that just repeat in our lives over and over. So there's only so many themes, but there's an infinite variation of them.
yeah, exactly.
Describing each person has their own story, their own way that they have worked through or not worked through these different issues. So when you work with people enough, like you and I have, and you see the repetition of the patterns,
Yes,
so
you
now we
know,
have a
sometimes
clue.
you can look some people in the eyes for 2 seconds. You can hear them speak one word, check their behavior for 1 second, and then you already know where they are now, where they have been, and where they probably had to. And some people think you're fortune teller or something like that, but that's not it. It's really psychology. It's really okay.
Well, it's experience, and at the same time, what I have learned about that
Yeah,
is it's only a really good hunch. The
of
other
course.
person absolutely has to validate that what you're thinking is
Agree.
actually really what's going on, because
When
we
I
make
when I when I brag about it, and I always say to people, I have only 10 seconds in your eyes, and then I know that I'm 70% right. Because the other, that way I'm never wrong. But Tina, because that's the challenge. Because this is for many people out of their league to understand, to comprehend. So how do you bring this in the field of business? I know that you coach a lot of executives, important people. Some have personal problems, some have business challenges, some go crazy because of their stuff. So everybody have their own thing, right? So how do you translate this kind of material that is for, especially for rational people, very far away, right? How do you translate it in business? Because in business, most of the people are almost like they have no sense at all, only rational.
well, there's a wonderful saying that says we take ourselves wherever we go.
True.
So whether you're at home with your family or whether you're in business whether you're negotiating for something or you're working with a team or within a team, we take ourselves wherever we go. So if we are unconscious about how we project to other people, how people perceive us, again, we're only working with a small amount of information. And what the mind does is we jump in and we make assumptions. Well, it must be this, or it must be that, or somebody must be thinking about me. No. So these skills, the ones that I teach in Mastering Under Pressure, are universal skills. Okay, so it's focus. So again, you can take this into school if you're a student, if you're an athlete, if you're performing, if you're in front of people, if you're whatever you're doing. How do I focus? When am I in focus? When am I out of focus? How do I bring myself back? What's the best kind of focus to use for this particular task? When do I need to let my mind go and wander? So all these things, again, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, if you're at work, how much do we focus? Again, so much work is online now. I mean, I think the statistics say that if you get distracted into a social media thing for 1 minute, you're there for about 25. And how to recognize, whoa, I've lost it. Or when is the best time of day for me to work? Some people are really good at night. Some people are really good in the morning. Don't ask me to do a really deep therapy session at night because I'm not there.
Yeah,
I want to be present. If you're paying me to be there, I want to be there emotionally in every which way. So I've never worked at night, not from the time I was raising my kids, not the time that I started, unless it's, an emergency, but I'll meet you early in the morning. Like you and I are talking, we had the option, right? We could have done this late at night, but no.
Yeah, for me, it was like, I want to make time for this because we don't talk a lot. We do think alike, and we have the same ambition and goal. So I have to make time for this because I had a 6-hour training before this, right? I did training for public
So
speaking.
I appreciate you.
No, I think it's important for. So I think it's important also for the people around me. We are working on a new event organization, and the IT community, the least rational, emotional people in the world that cut themselves off. Right, a software programmer is, yeah, like a lot of social skills and involvement and empathy. So it's the most challenging person to change or to bring to insight, to say it like that. And so that's why actually we're really doing this. So to go back there, because you wrote the book, then things went rolling. Before that, you did other things, of course, and then indeed you said half a year ago suddenly I was at TED. What was your feeling when they invited you? Because I know you.
Oh, wow. I know I had to go after it. It was one of those great challenges that was on my bucket list that I really wanted to do a TED talk or a TEDx talk. And so I hired a coach because I didn't have the experience and I didn't really know where to start. And the competition is very fierce.
Mm-hmm.
I said that you could send out 85 different applications and maybe not get invited. So so I hired a coach who was, and I invested a good amount of money in it, but she was worth it. But she took me to a place, I've been speaking for a long time, so I'm pretty comfortable at it. She took me to a place that was just like, she would just kind of correct this and correct it. Could you just try it like this? Could you just
I was impressed when I saw it because I know you. You're like me when we're in the flow, and there on stage, that was not Tina, not the one that I know. It was calm, peaceful, palm straight to the point, on like a laser, and I was like, wow, right? That was when I saw your video. I was like, wow, and the message was clear for everyone. Doesn't matter what education.
So I have from the TED Talk, which bring back. This is what is a mantra that I created. This is a magnet. I'm happy to give them out, but it's so when we talk about how do you bring this into business?
Yes. How do you bring this into business for you, for how you did it for
So
yourself?
the body gets triggered before the mind.
Yeah.
And so when we try to solve our problems just from the mind, we could just kind of just go around and around in loops and never really kind of be able to get beyond. Or we have a certain pattern that shows, oh, there I did it again, or there I did it again. And so what we do is we start with a level of awareness. That's what the whole program, and I'll go back to kind of explaining some of those things in a minute. But basically, we have to be aware of what we're doing before we can change anything. So the first part of it is just notice. I notice that I'm starting to get triggered. So I don't like to be controlled. I don't know that anybody really does, but I really don't like it. And I have set a good part of my life and patterned it in a way that I have as much control of my own time as possible, which is why I work for myself and have for all these years. So I know when I'm feeling like the world is kind of coming in on me and I'm losing control of something, I start to get it up here, my neck and my shoulders, and everything gets really tight. So by knowing this and knowing the pattern, because the body creates the pattern, the body uses energy to be able to use as armor. We don't have those, like the knights used to have the metal. We don't have that. We have energetic armor. So when we start to tighten, so I start to look around. I'm feeling that feeling. What's going on? Where am I feeling out of control? So it's the first thing that's going to come to me. So I stop. I cut. So I kind of use this like a movie. The movie's running. Okay, something's coming along. Let's just cut.
Yeah.
All right, now that I've noticed, I can take some time. What's going on here? What's happening? What's happening? I notice the thoughts and the feelings and the sensations that are running through my body. Oh, I'm feeling really closed in. That person just told me something in a really nasty tone, and my body responded. Oh, okay. So now I know where it came from. It's not like, again, a lot of times people think, oh, there's so many things going on, I can't figure it out. Yes, you can. But it takes time, and it takes kind of a willingness to take a moment. Oh, he just talked to me in a certain way. I was feeling fine before that. Now I'm not. Maybe I need to go to talk to that person. Or maybe I let it go. I make a decision. Okay. And then I respond. So I get to choose how I respond. So being in control of your life, people always think it's controlling other people, controlling other situations. It's being a choice. I get to choose how I want to do this. But if life is moving so fast and you don't have this relationship with yourself, however you do it, life does you.
Yeah, true. Then everything is happening.
It does it anyway. I mean, I was driving down the highway the other day, and there was a car that just came from behind and just rammed me. Like, things happen. But when I got out of the car, I was really calm. I could handle the situation. Right. As somebody said a long time ago, I've done a lot of crisis training. So somebody like me, and probably I'm really good in an emergency. And afterwards, as soon as I got on the phone with my husband, I started to cry, but in the moment. So this is the way I look at it, Damy, and I think this is important for your people to understand and know. So let's imagine that this is your nervous system's capacity for stress. They call it the window of tolerance, which I talked about this in my talk. So as long as we're in this window, we're good. I can handle this, I can handle that, I can handle my computer going or my kid. But as soon as the stress becomes greater than your nervous system's tolerance, we go into the stress response. And when we go into the stress response, is exactly what I described. Our fingers get tingly, all the blood races to the heart because it's getting ready for fight, flight, or freeze. And so But most importantly for people at work is the brain goes offline. We can't think clearly.
Yeah, true.
Because if you imagine that this is the brain, okay, this is the brain stem. This part goes down into the gut and gives all that information. And this is the primitive brain. This is just the instinctual part of us, just, you know, just kind of when there's danger, and the brain is always looking for danger 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It's a sentry. So it's going to pick up something that's in our history or that makes us feel unsafe. And depending on your emotional level of maturity, it goes through the limbic system, which is the emotional center. And we either recognize it and do something with it. And this is the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that is our executive functioning, which we need at work. We need this part of us. And so when the danger hits and we can't process it, this part of the brain goes offline. And then it's like, what was I thinking? What was I doing? I can't think clearly. I'm confused. My mind is. And so the value of doing this work is to increase your nervous system's tolerance for stress. So here comes a problem. It's just another problem. You know? So as soon as I saw my car, oh my God, in the back, and you know, I knew I was okay. And there was a guy behind me whose car got hit, and an older gentleman, and he was shaking, and he had, you know, I was so grateful. I'm so grateful for putting in the time and the energy and the effort so that my body and my mind was there. You know? And the craziest thing is this crazy watch, this Apple Watch, which I had just gotten, called 911 for me.
Okay.
You know, like I was sitting on the, you know, and it's like, don't hang up, don't hang up. Did you have a crash? Did you have a crash? You know, so it called my husband. I mean, it was like absolutely crazy. But all of that helped to just really kind of put the things in perspective. It was just the car. I was okay. You know, the people climbing were actually okay. and then we could, you know, okay, what's the next thing I need to do? I need to go to the mechanic. I need to do this. I need to do that. So this part I didn't lose.
Yeah, you didn't freeze.
Right, until later at night. And it's like, oh my God, how did that happen? You know, but
how do you let's imagine? What I want to know is just we have so many cases that we treated, right? Also experience ourselves, right? And from my own experience, I know that most of them you not really forget, but they pass by. But some of them will always stick with you. Can you give me one of them? Which case will always stick to you, but without going in personal detail, but just the case itself?
well, I've got a couple cases that are just happening. One woman just right now, or enough times that I've experienced when it comes to grief and loss or trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, we're talking about trauma. So in trauma training, we talk about there's little T's, you know, the criticisms, the over time, you know, my father was really moody and he would raise his voice or he would go silent. And they were like little T's that registered within me, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the big T's, the big traumas that happen in people's lives. You know, so one woman that I just started to work with just actually yesterday, very, very, very tragic. She lost her little 11-month-old granddaughter, and then her son committed suicide.
Oh.
So, and this is now 3 years that she can't talk about her son without crying. She just can't. She can't go to family events. She can't function really, because what happens, let's just say you have a bad day and you go to sleep at night and you wake up the next morning, not so bad. So the brain processes the information overnight, sorts it, and the next day, again, it has shifted. But if it's a traumatic memory and it doesn't get processed right away, it has the opportunity to go into long-term memory. And so when it's in long-term memory, that's where it gets frozen in time. And those are the ones that are just really, really hard to budge on our own, because we're trying to talk ourselves out of it, but it has nothing to do, it's the wrong instrument for the problem. So a lot of the trauma work, which has been, again, for somebody like me in my field, has been such a blessing, because now I have the tools. When somebody comes to me with something like as traumatic and traumatizing and dramatic as that is, I have the tools to be able to help her process that which is in long-term memory, so that it becomes, you never forget you never forget the problem. You know, I lost my parents in a car accident, so perfect
Yes, I
example.
know that.
But I knew enough about this, about grief and loss, that I worked myself through. It took me 3 years, honestly, until I was able to just talk about it like I can talk about it now, without the emotion. And that's where we really want to, we don't lose the memory, but we want to lose the trigger. You know, we want to lose that emotional reaction.
Yeah, that's what I meant before when I said to you, the first time someone tell you a bad story, for example, about rape or something like that, you're like, oh, really? And then I sometimes I make the metaphor that I say, okay, it's like when you are in old times, and then someone takes a whip and slashes you on your back. The first one really, really, really hurts. After number 1000, you're laughing about it, and that's the moment you have to watch out, because you still need to care, right? And it's with this thing.
So that's where the empathy comes in.
Yeah.
Empathy, but also having enough skill not to get so pulled in.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you get so pulled in, you're now down there with the other person, and
then you cannot solve anything. If you go there, you cannot solve. That
was the best advice I ever got from when I was in training. I had to tape my sessions so that my supervisor could listen. And she said, "Oh my God, Tina," she says, "you're never going to survive." She said, "You always have to be outside of the problem."
Yes.
Right? That's our job, is really being outside of the problem, so that we can support somebody else in looking at things that they've never seen before. Because when we have a traumatic memory, it is very telescopic. We only see this little part. I'll tell you one of the most interesting stories that I had in terms of doing that work. I moved to New York, Long Island, actually, on the day of 2001 of the World Trade Center, when the planes went into the building.
Mm-hmm.
And because of my trauma training, I was really motivated to go into Manhattan and volunteer to work with people who had been traumatized from the experience. And so I went as part of this organization, and I went, and a gentleman came in who felt like he hadn't done anything. This was maybe a week after it happened. And he felt that what they call survivor's guilt. Why did I live? And, I was running out of the building like everybody else. Why did I live and somebody else died? So many people died. And he couldn't get that thought out of his mind. And so there's a process called EMDR. It's called eye movement desensitization reprocessing, where I work with helping people process the information by using the fingers and the eyes and so on. And so I took him through this process, and all of a sudden it flashed into his memory that while he was running, there was a woman in front of him that was running with a baby. And they were running to the Staten Island ferry to get off of Manhattan. And he took the baby and he put the baby in his jacket. And he took the mom and the baby and he got them onto the ferry.
Okay. That's a beautiful story.
And he had no memory of it until we went through this process.
Oh, wow.
None, zero. And so it's just a fascinating process to watch the mind when you start to open it up, what it holds in memory and what it connects. So one memory leads to another, that leads to another, that leads to another. So once you get into the track of the memory, I just kind of I'm just really kind of holding the space, and I'm doing more than just that, but I'm letting the story unfold. And so part of what you just said, when you're with somebody who's had an experience and you've heard them many times before, it's really being in the moment with that person,
Yeah.
moment to moment to moment.
Like we discussed it before. Everybody is unique, uniquely shaped, also in the mindset, and even when we have certain categories, right? And it's also with the experience. Only it you have to be caring to be able to help somebody. Only you do not have to drown in it, right? You have to keep a distance, and certainly you're not. You should never rationalize it, because then you become your own enemy. Better stop
That's
your
right.
work then, right? Because you have to be caring, you have to show love, you have to show guidance, and those kind of things. Otherwise, people cannot get out of them alone. I know that.
That's right.
So because I know you do this, right? And like you said before, they always called me the mother, and you still behave like that also outside. I mean, even when we are in a professional environment, you were always the one that put the shoulder for everybody to cry, right? So I know you cannot, but you have this new program. I love it. I love the title, Under the Hood, right? So under the hood in your case, right?
Right. Right.
um, how is the response in general? Of course, we have the YouTube videos, but I know people say other things behind the screens. How is the response about you doing this?
It's really good. People, I mean, I happen to love doing it. I have one actually going on today at 11 a.m. Pacific time, which is kind of late, very late your time.
Yeah, probably I'm sleeping then.
Probably you'll be sleeping, but you can watch the video, the replay. It needs more eyes, because again, so much of being in one's own business, and you know this better than anybody, or as well as anybody, we have our profession. Okay, so all your education and everything goes, a lot of training and all of that. Okay, I call this, like, I have this in one of my talks, so a little triangle. So here's your professional work. Okay, here's the strategy of taking your work into the world, right? And this is where most businesses spend a lot of their time, most of their time. And then we have the emotional side, right, which is where most people don't spend a lot of time. But
They
if
run
you have
away from it. Most run away from it.
That's right. But if you have all three working at one time, it's really cool. So
Yeah,
for
true.
me, these two are really, really strong. And what I've had to do, because I'm in my own business and I'm working on scaling this, so it's not just one-on-one, it's not just me having one client at a time and doing this work. I want thousands and thousands of people to have this work. So that requires marketing, sales, the business side of this knowledge.
Well, I saw you grow the last I think 5-6 years that we know each other. I saw you grow where you are. And sometimes it was a little bit down, and then it was go big step forward again. But what I'm curious about is, where are we in 5 years later?
So 5 years later, I have my somebody
of course you have.
somebody actually really pushed me to articulate it more clearly than ever.
Okay.
And so in 5 years, I'm going to be fairly old, but not too old to do this work.
You have a president that's older than you, and he can also do it.
I'm not going anywhere for a while, hopefully. But so my end game is really clear.
Yes. What is your end game? What is your legacy? No, your legacy.
I want to be able to share this like I'm sharing with you. Speaking and teaching is really my passion. I'm working on training other psychotherapists to do this work.
Yeah.
And so a certification program for therapists, and with the business support, because we're not the greatest business people in the world. Helpers really sometimes help too much and don't know, really have
We usually don't know. Even I'm a experienced CEO, but when I'm helping, I don't care about the money.
Right. Okay, but your children have to eat. You need a roof
Yeah,
over
that's
your
the
head. You
problem.
need food on the table. You need so and the other part of it, Damy, is that if we make money, really make a lot of money doing this, we have that much more to give away.
Yeah, I agree, but still, you know me, right? I used to be that kind of person who was very rational and scraping millions, but somehow when I help people, I cannot do it.
Well, we need to talk,
Yeah,
okay? Because there are ways for you to be able to do what you do and give how beautifully you give, and also create the wealth
okay, that will be behind the screens next time.
that you can give back. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really the goal. So I'm part of a couple different organizations and World Economic Summit and Change Makers, and I'm part of another one that the whole piece is about creating legacy wealth to give back, to make an impact.
True.
That's it. Right. So that's really kind of the drive that I have, and is to be able, I'd love to be a philanthropist. That would be the most fun thing, to be able to give money away. Because
I'm a philanthropist, only very small.
but we only need so much money to live. And so I'm part of another organization, they call it Dimes and Dollars. Once we have the dimes done,
Yes.
and we have enough money to feed our families and roof over our head and get out of survival, then we can start to really kind of look at really what wealth building, which is, again, it's so you asked me my end game. So creating this legacy that this company can be bought, can taken over, maybe one of my kids, or to sell it, that this work will continue. And so so I have it kind of in two different, I have my programs, I have inexpensive programs that people can buy, and I've learned how to be a confident negotiator, mastery over eating. I did a lot of work with women with eating disorders and how to kind of connect.
Yeah, it's a big problem also.
Around our weight. I have another one on why positive thinking is highly overrated, because I call it productive thinking as opposed to positive thinking. Do my thoughts produce something useful for me?
True.
As opposed to, oh, I'm beautiful, everything's going to be great, because if there's another part of us that is undermining that, like, you got to be kidding, that's never going to happen.
For me, the wishing and praying is also positive thinking, but it doesn't always bring what you want to have, and not so fast, because it's a passive way of positive thinking.
I call it the productive thinking really help when I can begin to. I'm going to go back and just kind of share a little bit about just what's in that program, because I think it's helpful for people to know the specific skills that I'm talking about that actually can lead to this greater performance. So focus, relaxation, learning how to initiate the relaxation response. It's not just sitting in front of the TV. It's actually getting the nervous system so quiet and the brain waves so quiet that the body really relaxes, because it's the only voluntary mechanism that we have that will change our nervous system. So when you're in that fight or flight, and I recognize it and I want to relax, it's a really nice deep breath, and you have to learn how to do it as an adult, because we forget, we do it as babies. It's a 3-part breath. So it's focus, relaxation, dealing with the negative self-talk, which again, I go back to that productive thinking, looking at our belief systems, what's operating under that hood, and then how to visualize, using visualization as a tool, and then dealing with fear, and using fear as our greatest teacher. Because just like you said, we want to go like this, but when we do that and we don't look at it, we lose the message.
Yeah.
Why am I so
face
scared?
it. You have to face it.
What's underneath that? What do I need to do in order to be able to shift that, and so on? So
interesting.
I think so. It's kept me interested all these years and
No, no,
still.
it's really interesting because you and me have a totally different approach. You have a clinical approach, and I have an experience approach. I'm self-taught actually, and what I learned how to program people bits by bits, right?
Mhm.
So when I teach my communication skills, what I actually do is I teach people direct applicable skills so they can use it. So I give a little bit theory and then let them practice it, because why? Less is more in that case, because at the end of the training they understood it. Because I see a lot of people that give public speaking training or negotiation skills of sales, and then actually to me that's nothing more than a hints and tips from the marketing book that everybody does. It does nothing to do with your development and become a stronger individual person in what you do. And so I try to program people. So I have a basic training and then an advanced training and an expert training. And so in the basic training, I will probably on Sesame Street level explain what communication actually is, how influencing works, that you have to forget your own perception and blah blah blah. And then in the advanced, I will teach people how to use the different kind of questioning techniques and the definitions of questions and the emotional triggers of the kind of question that you're asking, and how to balance that and how to abuse them to influence the situation to sell something or to and then in the expert training, then I will simply really hammer one day on the whole psychology behind communication techniques or profiling behavior, that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
and then we go to deepness, and then the only way to get out of that and master it is practice. It's a one time like one it's a one time training in your whole life if you're serious about it. But in countries like Indonesia, in Europe, in the West, actually, it's quite common right now that we have to develop ourselves from the personal perspective and improve our human performance on the working floor, and that way we improve the results. But here in Indonesia, but also in other countries, in Asian countries, it's still about status and right education. Here it's very black and white still, that if you have a 6 years doctor or professor, then you're more valuable than a woman like Tina with 40 years experience, right? But you see that's really difficult to do here. So to convince people. So Tina, um, you said in 5 years I want to create this legacy and ensure that my program goes into eternity, meaning somehow it continues and it, are you already there? Do you really believe that's going to happen, or you wish it will happen?
No, it's more than a wish. I mean, I put my time, my energy, my money behind it. I learned, Damy, really, really, really early on, and I don't know how I learned this, but I did, that there are consequences for our behavior. And
Definitely.
so it was always so obvious to me. You know, I used to do my homework on a Friday afternoon so that I would have the whole weekend free and then I'd be able to relax. And most of my friends all just kind of waited till Sunday or Sunday night to do their homework. And it's like, why would I do that? You know, if I did it Friday, then I have the whole, I don't have to worry about it. So these kinds of things from, again, from the time I was very small. So I understand that if I don't do it, it's not going to get done. I mean, you know, in terms of like the law of attraction and spirituality and all of that kind of stuff, I believe in that, but I believe in it because I think I understand it, that when we're laser focused, laser focused, and we put that energy out and we put it out into the world and we put it into our social media and we attract people, like-minded people. That's the law of attraction.
True,
It's really not a whole lot more than that. So
true.
I understand that. So if I want, and when my message is wishy-washy, so is the response. It's wishy-washy. So as we get clearer and clearer and clearer, what is my end game? What is my goal? Who are the people that I want to reach? Then I put my money and my action behind that to do the best I can. What's in my control? What's out of my control? You know, to do the best I can to make it happen. If I sit back and I don't do anything, it doesn't happen for me. Maybe for other people, you know, the world comes and people will, you know, and people do show up and they show up. But if I don't put any energy out, you know, what's the saying is, you know, where energy expands, whatever direction that you send it, that's where it's going to go.
Yeah.
So if you send it inward into self-destruction, that's where it's going to go. And if you send it out, that's where it's going to go. I can't think of the saying like right off my head, but wherever we go, energy goes. You know, wherever if energy flows, wherever we go, energy flows.
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
Yeah,
I
but
understand what you mean.
so if that's my goal, and it's I'm still going. I'm going to be 76 in a couple of weeks, and so you asked me, I'm there yet? All my friends are retired.
My grandma turned out 95 and still dancing and happy and 95. So there's a long way to go. And why? Because she always lived happy and never really worries about things. She learned by herself that when she worries, it affects your body. And when you want to grow old, you have to stay healthy and less worried.
So as I say, some people learn it just by life. Yes. You know, these things that we're talking about, but many times people don't.
But you also learn it by life, only you have the luxury that you're able to translate it because of your knowledge. That's what I understand from. I admire you because you are actually when I met you the first time, you were really caring and a positive-minded woman who supports everybody, but meanwhile afraid to show herself, and that changed in those years. In those fight, suddenly Tina jumps out, right? And that's what I like about you, because you are that person that would not understand a person like me if we do not have the lessons that you had and the growth, right? You have to imagine that part of my job was in the beginning. I did recruitment for all kinds of multicultural people, all kinds of social classes, and later I'm that's why I understand you also a lot, because the government asked me to help people who are demotivated and already 55 to 60 plus, and then you also meet people that are already retiring. And then suddenly you meet people that on a higher level that are retiring, a financial director of famous European bank, for example, and then being the international finance director, and then suddenly he retires, and then who's that woman at home? And who are those people that are, they call my kids? You know, I have no idea. Normally I just meet them once every day, and now I have to spend 24 hours with them. They make me crazy, right? And I try to help those people also. And when I met you, because when I met you, there was the moment that you still had a bad experience and still was processing, actually, right? And I admired you were part of the team because you wanted to help people still, even when you're stuck. So that's how I remembered you. And then when I saw you, the book and Grow, and we talked in between a little bit here and there, and you write this beautiful recommendation for me on my LinkedIn to empower. You know, I have to talk with Tina one more time. And I know it's going to be totally different than all the other candidates, because the other candidates will be about their profession, about their choices and their career. But with Tina, who she is, that is her work. Right? I cannot say with you, oh, we go to the person behind, because the person behind is a prawn. That is who you are and why you do it. So Tina, do you have anything to tell from your own perspective? Before we close.
Number one, I want to thank you for inviting me, and good questions and good conversation, and a good opportunity to share these things that I feel so passionate about. And I think the last thing that I would want to say to people is, what could be more interesting than you? Really, take the time, be curious. Yeah. Why do I do what I do? You know, what's going on here? Yeah. And there's so many different avenues of self-exploration and personal growth. And the more time and energy you put into understanding yourself, the better person you're going to be. That's it.
Yeah, I agree on that.